Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. Today we're going to talk about the wonderful world of X1X. Look at that little guy. That is an X1X Frankenstein figure. And that is a studio light. See the studio light over there? Look at that. Glimpse into my studio. The vast sound stage that is Basement of Horror. You can see a little behind the scenes glimpse right there. But here we have an X1X Frankenstein figure. It says Bride of Frankenstein, but they never made a bride, just the monster. This is from 2006. Some of the toys in this series say 2005, but most of them say copyright 2006. And a lot of the other things we're going to look at are from 2006. So I'm going to say this big monster push was from 2006. But for whatever reason, some of the copyrights are the previous year. Well, before we start on this topic, let me say that thank you for hanging in there with me. I know I've been off for a few weeks. The season is winding down. You might know that we here at, this is the royal we at Basement of Horror, run in seasons, like television seasons. And we're starting to enter the final stretch. We're not done yet. But just psychologically prepare yourself. We do a season that runs for about 6 months, from October into the spring. Usually a little more than 6 or 7 months. And then we have the summer hiatus, just like the old days TV when we grew up. And we can even have reruns. You can just watch the old shows and there's your reruns. And we might have a few specials over the summer. But we're still in winter right now, so we're not there yet. I'm just letting you know, if you're a new viewer, this show runs in seasons. And I think this is our 7th season. I stopped numbering them. I need to go back and redo it. The titles on all the episodes to get that straightened out. But I think this is the 7th season. But like I said, we still have several episodes left. We're not going away just yet. I'm just letting you know we have some new subscribers who might not know how this works. So I'm just letting you know. I've been running into, as I always do this time of year, production difficulties with the final episodes of the season. I really need that summer hiatus. I really need that, not just psychologically for my mental health, but I also need time to prepare for the next season. And that's part of why, hopefully, I'd like to think the October episodes are pretty strong. I hope you'll agree. I try to make them strong. And that preparation tends to last through the holidays, and then by the time we get to this time of year, so the wheels start getting a little wobbly. And for instance, some of the things I've encountered the last few weeks, I wanted to do, well, like this episode today, I had a series of figures that you're going to see that were made in color and black and white. And I thought I had both. I still think I have both, but I could only find the color set. So I tore the basement apart looking for the black and white ones. I said, I know I bought those black and white ones at the same time that I bought the color ones. And I tore the basement upside down. I could not find them, but that delayed shooting this episode while I was looking for that. And then the next one I wanted to do, the next episode, there was another series of toys, And I opened the box. They had the whole set in there, and two of the characters were missing. And I could see the space where they should be. And I said, where are they? They're not like the rarest. In fact, they're very common. They're virtually worthless. So it's not like the rarest ones were missing. Just for some reason, these two were not in the box. And again, I just went through every box in the basement, opening everything up. I could not find those two characters, so I ended up buying them on eBay. And one has arrived, and the other hopefully will arrive in a few days, but that delayed that episode. So that's an example of some of the things I'm experiencing. The episode that I'd hoped would be the season finale. We used to have exciting season finales. It was meant in satire, exciting season finale. They were not exciting. They were more personal and kind of subdued. And I had an idea for kind of a personal one, but there was a particular item I needed. And there are many sellers on eBay that have this, shall we say, category of item, but they have every one imaginable except the one that I need. And I've talked to some of these sellers, like, do you have this one? And, well, let me see, look at my inventory, and they have every other one, but not that one. And if I don't have that item, I don't know if I want to do that episode, because I think it's important to visually show you that thing. So I might not do that episode. Another example, this is just a wine session, I never drink wine. I mean, whining. But another example, I was planning on doing an episode, 3 or 4 episodes from now, that would look at some very classic 70s monsters that we haven't covered on the show. And I have some nice ones, but one of them has a part that's cracked. And I didn't want to show it that way. So lo and behold, one pops up on eBay with the parts that I need. I said, I can buy this to use as replacement parts and swap it out. But it's still hundreds of dollars. But I thought, well, maybe I should just bite the bullet and buy it anyway, because then I'll have a loose one to show in addition to the packaged ones. But the seller kind of ghosted me. I was trying to negotiate a price, and now I feel like he's sort of disrespected me, and I'm not going to buy it now. So now I'm probably not going to do that episode, because I don't want to do it with a broken part. So that kind of scratched off that episode. So this is what I encounter as I go into the home stretch. The second half of the season, this kind of thing comes up. I'm just kind of giving you a glimpse into my misery behind the scenes, just like we saw the light behind the scenes. This starts to come up. Stuff like this comes up every episode. So my prep over the summer works through the first half, through the holidays, and maybe a little past the holidays, and then it can only go so far. And then I start running into these problems, and it's just like every episode was like pushing a boulder uphill, and then it rolls back, flattens me again. So that's why you always see some delays this time of year. Some weeks pass without an episode, because it just gets harder and harder. By the time I get to the end of the season, I'm crawling on bloodied knees across the finish line. And when that last episode is done, when I say the one who dies with most toys is dead for the last time, I'm like, whew, it's Miller time. Well, I never drink Miller. So, like wine, I never drink it. But that's kind of a glimpse into what's going on. So if you notice some delays, this time of year, there's always delays, that's probably what's going on. I'm encountering obstacles every time, every episode. There's obstacles. But we have an episode today, and we'll have an episode next week, and we'll have an episode the week after that. So I've solved some problems, and I think we'll have an uninterrupted run for a while before some road bumps appear again. But today we have an interesting. See, I'm finally starting the episode after all. What is this? 2 hours? No, 10 minutes. I don't know. Finally, properly starting the episode. What is X1X? Ordinarily, I talk about the year that a company started and who founded it and where it was based and all that kind of stuff. X1X is kind of a mystery, and even if I had the information, I don't know that I would share it, because this company has quite a legal history, and I'm going to have to walk on eggs a little bit in this episode to avoid stepping on a landmine. Let's look at this beautiful poster, and I'm pretty sure this is 2006. Let's see. Doesn't say. No. Well, anyway, if it's not, it's 2005 or 6, thereabouts. I don't know if you can see this whole thing, or how much glare there is. This is not an original theatrical poster. This is a copy of a real art that was a movie distribution company that reissued Universal 30s and 40s horror movies. Real Art reissued those films in the 50s. And they did these more garish-looking, kind of almost carnival-like or sideshow, spook show, really, almost spook show style posters. And this is a reproduction of the Real Art poster for The Mummy, for the reissue, the 50s reissue. But it's cut off. I mean, it's kind of a zoomed in and cropped version. And this was sold with a set of posters that we'll see in dollar stores. This was produced by Creepy Classics Posters. Now, I was watching Analog Toys. You ever watch that channel? I was watching that today, and the host was reviewing some action figures, modern action figures, that come in boxes, but he says, we're not going to look at them in the box. We're going to look at them out of the box. And he says, because let's face it, reading the legal language on a box is lame. So the implication, the toy channels that look at a package and read the legal info, they're lame. And I thought, at Basement of Horror, if you haven't figured it out in the last 15 minutes, at Basement of Horror, we are the lamest of the lame. That's a song lyric. We are the lamest of the lame at Basement of Horror. So let's read the legal language on this poster. It says Creepy Classics Posters, and has a barcode. I don't think we need to see the barcode. Distributed by Greenbrier International Inc., 500 Volvo Parkway, Chesapeake, Virginia. Made in Taiwan. But it doesn't say anything about X1. Oh, wait a minute, here we go. 2006 property of X1X Archive Inc. There we are. And we'll find a similar situation with all of this stuff. They're not actually produced by X1X. They're licensed through X1X. And this series of posters, it's important. I'm starting with the posters because the posters are central to the whole thing. This Frankenstein that I showed you. See the artwork on it? That is also a Real Art reissue poster for the movie The Bride of Frankenstein. That's the art that's on the Real Art poster. Again, Real Art is a company, a distribution company that put out the Universal Monsters horror movies in the 50s. So they were reissuing the movies, re-releasing the movies in the 1950s. And the distribution company was Real Art. And they made these less elegant looking posters that were more like a ghost show, spook show style, or a carnival style. And all of the artwork, all of these items are taken from posters. Now, this was the grand plan for the company X1X. And it's actually called X1X Archive, Inc. It has a lot of doing business as names. I spent a few hours researching court cases involving X1X and reading the legal papers, the legal descriptions, the summaries of these lawsuits or threatened lawsuits, just to try to know what I'm saying before I say it, so I don't put my foot in my mouth. Too late, I know. But the people behind X1X owned a collection of movie posters, original movie posters and lobby cards, movie paper. That's why it's the X1X Archive. That's why the archive is in the name. And they thought, because the posters are in the public domain and legal precedent has determined that indeed movie posters and promotional items, at least up to a certain time, are indeed in the public domain. So that is settled law. So they thought, X1X, if they owned the posters, like the original, not this reproduction, but the original Real Art mummy poster, and the poster's in the public domain, therefore, they had the right to license the imagery on that poster to make other products like this mummy figure. Oh, he's so cute. Look at that. Isn't he cute? Because they own the poster and it's in their archive, they could then license the imagery on the poster to other companies to produce toys and other products, thereby bypassing Universal Studios, which would normally be the source you would go to. Their licensed Universal Monsters, you would talk to Universal Studios, and you would license the characters through them, and then their marketing department would get involved, and you'd have to get the product approved by them, and it's a whole process. And most of the Universal stuff you've seen on the show was done that way. Those companies went through Universal Studios. I gotta find an excuse to show my creature every episode. So there's an Azrak Kenway International creature from the Black Lagoon, and he's definitely licensed through Universal Studios. When Azrak Kenway made that toy series, they sought and received licensing through Universal Studios. But not every Universal item is licensed. There are unlicensed items and knockoffs and bootlegs and so on. But the stuff that presents itself as Universal Monsters, generally that is licensed through Universal Studios. And it's a difficult process and an expensive process. So particularly at that time in the 2000s, there was a lot of talk, at least in the collecting hobby, about how difficult it was to deal with Universal Studios. So that was something in the air at the time. And this was an alternative. This company, X1X, said, well, you don't have to deal with Universal Studios. Just come to us. We'll license the Frankenstein monster, the Lugosi Dracula, all this other stuff that Universal owned. Because we have the posters, we can license these character designs. That was the idea. And then in 2000, let's say 2006, again, some of these say 2005, but in 2006, there was this wave of affordable monster stuff in dollar stores. Now, there wasn't all dollar stores. There were some other more upscale stores that carried some things too, but the dollar stores had all these figures and these posters, and there's all kinds of stuff. And it was like the 70s with the rack toys, you know, the Azrak Hanway and Lincoln and all that stuff on the shelves again. These cheap Universal, and people out there were saying, Lincoln's not Universal. I know, okay. There was this cheap Universal Monsters merchandise on the shelves at dollar stores, just like back when I was a kid at Ben Franklin or Kresge or whatever, or drugstores. You would see the Universal Monsters merchandise, like the Aurora models. This has nothing to do with anything, but just it's here, so let's look at it. Like this Aurora model kit. Now that's Toho, that's not Universal, but the Aurora models, and this is an original 1972 Aurora model. This is not a reissue. These things were sold at drugstores. That's where I first saw the Aurora kits. I remember the first time I ever saw one. It was a Creature from the Black Lagoon kit. It was at a drugstore. I don't remember what the name of the drugstore was, if it was a chain that still exists today or not. But I remember so vividly seeing that Aurora creature kit. And it was the first real monster toy I'd ever seen. I was so shocked that monster toys existed. I'd watched monster movies, but I'd never seen a monster toy in a store. I saw G.I. Joe or stuff like that. I had the Color Forms Outer Spacemen, but those were different. Those were not monsters like this. This was a monster, real Universal monster toy. It's a model kit, but in my mind it was a toy. And I was very excited. And I remember that moment, seeing that thing for the first time and getting my dad saying, look, I called it a Creature Features toy. I remember the moment, look, they made Creature Features toys. See? Creature Feature toy. Well, kids really haven't had that experience for a long time. Really, I guess the Imperial monsters from '86 were the last time kids had that experience, until 2006 with this crazy stuff. And then finally you had rack toys, Universal Monsters rack toys, on shelves in a dollar store. And if these had been licensed through Universal, like the NECA figures today, of course they'd cost a lot more. You know how much money NECA figures cost. They would cost a lot more money. These cost $1. All this stuff cost $1 each. The posters were $1, I think. It was in a dollar store. So you could buy all this weird stuff for $1 a piece. And incidentally, if you see a jump cut, it's because I have asthma. And whenever you see a jump cut, I'm probably coughing my head off. And I cut that out so you don't see or hear any of that. That's why you as I talk, you keep seeing these jump cuts in these episodes. That's what's happening. I'm going, coughing my head off. I should have an inhaler trying to calm it down. When I do those interview shows, somehow my lungs behave when I do the interview shows. Oh, but then I have water. You see me drinking the water during those interview shows. But during the regular episode, when you see a jump cut, you think, what did you just cut out? Coughing. That's what I cut out. Anyway, so that was the X1X plan. Oh, about the asthma. This is a weird episode. I'm whining and complaining about everything. That's also why I breathe so heavily. I'm always People complain, why do you breathe through your mouth? Asthma, deviated septum, all kinds of problems. That's why you always hear me all the time. I'm basically dying before your very eyes. That's the situation. One day, I would say one day I'll just slump over, but then no one would be able to edit and upload the episode, so that's not going to happen. But about X1X. This episode is about X1X, by the way. There was this wave of cheap Universal Monsters toys, and it all seemed to be licensed. I mean, here's that poster in full on the back of this card. So that is the complete poster. You see that they're really emphasizing the poster. But you also notice that the poster doesn't have his whole body, the jacket and all that. The poster has his face. And therein lies part of the problem. At the time, collectors were really wondering, how are they getting away with this? How is X1X getting away with this? Why isn't Universal? Universal is known for being very litigious. Universal went after me and some of my friends once for something we were making, and we got cease and desist letters from Universal's top copyright lawyer. I looked him up. He was a formidable guy. We didn't want to mess with him. So luckily nothing happened. We apologized and said we wouldn't do it again. They let us off. But they threatened us with some big fees and getting into a lot of trouble. So Universal, I know from firsthand, Universal can be very litigious and very thorough in enforcing their copyrights and their intellectual property rights. So at the time, collectors were thinking, well, how is this possible? How can this company be licensing all this stuff and getting away with this? Isn't Universal going ballistic? Aren't they coming down on them like a ton of bricks? We couldn't figure it out. It was a topic of discussion among collectors. Well, as far as I know, Universal, I don't have any evidence that Universal ever got on their case. I mean, I'd be surprised if they didn't, but if they did, it didn't rise to the level of a court case. As far as I know, I couldn't find any evidence of that. But there were a lot of other legal entanglements for X1X. And I want to be careful about how I talk about this, because X1X is also, I don't know if that entity still exists in any way or the people are out there somewhere, but I don't want to run afoul of them, because from everything I've read, they've logged a lot of hours in courtrooms. And I don't want to be the next court case with these guys. So Warner Brothers won a $2.57 million lawsuit against X1X and some related companies that were putting out merchandise licensed through X1X, depicting characters from The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, and Tom and Jerry, the animated Tom and Jerry. The best information I have is that Warner Brothers won that $2.57 million lawsuit that was reported in the Hollywood Reporter in 2014. And then in 2016, there was another judgment that reaffirmed the previous judgment. And that's the last. There was legal information online for 2006, 2009, 2011, 2014, 2016, all related to this case. So the last thing I saw was 2016, where the court ruled that $2.57 million judgment stood. It wasn't going to be overturned. That would stand. So that's the last I know about that case, and based on the media, because that was in the media, that was reported on. So it looked to me from the news reporting on that case that Warner Brothers won that case. And then there were other lawsuits like Fleischer Studios sued over Betty Boop. And I'm not going to get into the details about that because that went back and forth. And even though I've read what I think is the final decision, it's, for a layperson, it's a little confusing and I don't want to get it wrong. So, and particularly because Fleischer Studios threatened to sue PBS for talking about Betty Boop and, in Fleischer Studios' opinion, spreading misleading information in a program on PBS. So I don't want to spread misleading information and have Fleischer Studios threaten to sue me. So you can Google X1X Movie Archives Inc. is the full legal name. You can Google them and Warner Brothers and Fleischer Studios and lawsuits, and you can find all this information online. You can spend several hours looking through it all like I did. They also had legal issues with products related to rock stars, music products. And here's another name I hesitate to even mention. Susan Hart. I want to make a joke, but I'm not going to do it because she might sue me. But Susan Hart owns several AIP films, and she's not shy about using the court system. And apparently there was some legal situation with X1X and Susan Hart, but I think, I don't know if it ever actually went to court or not. There was a confidentiality agreement online regarding that situation, so I couldn't read what happened there. But apparently Susan Hart was not happy about something that they put out. And then there were other companies that interacted with X1X in the legal system. So you can Google that and you can read for yourself. You can interpret for yourself what all this means. But just the long and the short is that, yes, these companies that own these IPs were aware of this. They were not happy. And in some cases, at least, they did either threaten legal action or take legal action. And the outcome of all of that, you can read for yourself, because I don't want to trip on that and say something that is inaccurate. But there were legal situations regarding the X1X products, but not these. I couldn't find anything related to these toys particularly, which surprised me. So if Universal did take some action, it never got to a court, and it never got to the entertainment press, and it never got online. So I don't know if anything happened or not, but I couldn't find any evidence of Universal taking any kind of action or threatening any kind of action, which surprised me. I thought of all companies, Universal would do that, but I couldn't find any evidence of it. Now, there was at the time a lot of collector discussion about the ethics of this. Was this ethical? Was it legal? Was it ethical? I think at the time I would have said this was absolutely unethical. These days I have different attitudes about intellectual property. I think copyright laws are ridiculous, and there's a lot of stuff that should have gone into public domain a long time ago. And I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime, but really Congress needs to adjust the copyright laws and shorten the amount of time that something remains under copyright. I think things should go into public domain much sooner than they do. And I could spend a lot of time talking about why I think that is the case. But at this point, I don't really have the same moral fervor about IP and copyright that I might have years ago, for a lot of reasons, and ideological, political, you name it, a lot of reasons. So, but I'm not going to get into that. So I'm not going to come down hard on X1X for doing this. They thought they had an idea. They thought they had a business idea. They went for it, and I want to say it didn't work out, but we have this stuff, so I don't know if whether it worked out or not, I guess is up to debate. But they're not, as far as I know, they're not still in business. They're not still doing this. So I guess that says something about the extent to which it worked or didn't work. Anyway, let's go through some of this stuff. Before we get to the figures, here's some other odd stuff that X1X made. Well, X1X didn't make it. X1X licensed it. That was the whole idea. So another company would have made it, and X1X would have licensed it. And again, Tony from Analog Toys will enjoy the reading of the legal information here. This tag says X1X Movie Archive. All designs are property of X1X Movie Archive. 2006, all rights reserved. And the company appears to be briefly stated. We Make America Smile. And I want to say this came from Target. I think I bought this at Target. Well, what is it? Boxers. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Boxers. Again, this is not licensed through Universal or the Lugosi estate or the Cheney Jr. estate or any estate. Oh, here we go. Here's a cool one. This is the creature from the Black Lagoon. Well, what is it exactly? Sweatpants? What do you call these? Pajamas or sweatpants, right? There's the creature with the name Creature from the Black Lagoon and the character. These are long. Size small. Finally, this is not Universal. This is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I believe that's MGM, right? No, Paramount. It's Paramount. It's not MGM. It's Paramount. Paramount, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. A lot of people think it's Universal, but it's not. It's Paramount. That's the Frederick March, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The characters are public domain, but this particular movie is not. A lot of these movies will be entering the public domain very soon. In just a few years, a lot of these 30s movies will be going into public domain, as they should. Here's another oddball. I don't know what the point of this is. It's an inflatable King Kong. So all you can see here is just his head. There's the name King Kong. Take my word for it. This is a inflatable doll. And based on the head, I'm thinking it's about this big. And I've seen pictures of it inflated, and it's got arms, like fists and arms raised, and the legs spread, typical kind of King Kong pose. So just from the size of the head, I'm thinking it's about this big with the arms out. But this one's obviously not inflated. It's in its original bag. And I don't know how these were sold. I don't know if this was in another bag with a header card, or if this was just like a promotional item, maybe in conjunction with a home video release. I don't know. Maybe at a theme park? I'm not sure. You would think a theme park or a home video release, if it was in conjunction with a licensed product, that might have been a problem. But I just don't know how these were sold or distributed. It's kind of a mystery. If you know, tell me in the comments, how were these inflatable King Kongs sold? Or were they sold? It seems more like a giveaway or a display piece that you would put in a store. But then it would be in conjunction, I would think, with selling maybe the movie on DVD or something like that, in which case it'd be an unlicensed piece promoting a licensed thing. But I can't see the legal information through this bag. So I don't know, maybe it's licensed. This is, my understanding is that this is an X1X product. I could be wrong, but it's my understanding that it is. But since it's in a bag, there's some mystery there. I don't know firsthand. I only know what I've read, that it's an X1X product. Here's one of the best things to come out of the whole X1X adventure. This is a giant Frankenstein Pez. And I was surprised that when I found out this was not licensed, because Pez is a major company. That is a big company. That's not something for the dollar store market. This was expensive when it came out. And look at that. It's definitely Boris Karloff's Frankenstein. It's cute. Oh, look at all that legal language. I think we're going to read all of that, because we are the lamest of the lame at Basement of Horror. Giant Pez. He has the forehead scar, but he doesn't have neck bolts. He has the scar on his, I was going to say his chin, not exactly, his jawbone. He has that. Does he have the clamps up there? I can't quite see. I think he does. I'm not sure. It's a giant Pez dispenser with Pez candy in there. I mean, that's a cool item. That's a substantial piece. That is a neat toy. And Pez is a mainstream company. This is a mainstream item. And it's really strange that X1X and Pez were so bold as to put this out with that on the box and not get licensing from Universal Studios. I mean, that just shows you how much confidence everyone involved had in this system of licensing these things based on ownership, personal ownership of these posters. 2006. Manufactured and distributed by Brand New Products in Chicago. But it's an official Pez item. All designs are property of X1X Poster Archive Inc. 2007. Licensed by Brand New Products, LLC. So it's got a 2006 date on it and a 2007 date. So I think it came out in 2007 because I do remember this coming out after this other stuff. So I'm going to say this is 2007. I just realized that's Boris Karloff's face. That's not a picture of the toy. That's a picture of Boris Karloff as a Pez dispenser. That's taken from a photo, I guess, of Boris, or maybe it's a poster image. But that's not the toy, an illustration of the toy. That's Boris himself. And that Frankenstein image is the same one used on these toys. You know, that image from the poster. So this is a cool toy. It's just really audacious that Pez put that out without a universal license. That is very interesting. I don't think that would happen today. I don't, not just because of the precedent set by this enterprise, but I just don't think the climate is such that would happen today. Let's look at some of these posters. Here's a cool one. This is Curse of the Werewolf. I don't know if this is reflecting or glaring. I'll move it back and forth so that hopefully at some point you'll get a good look at it. Can we get it into... Nah, it's a little too big for this camera over here. You can get a sense of it though. Now I've got the original poster that this is taken from. This is not a real art. This is a French poster. And I'm not sure if it's Belgium or France. I think it's France. I think it's in French. But it's a French release poster. It's not the UK Hammer poster. It's not the US Universal. Universal released Curse of the Werewolf. It's a Hammer movie. But Universal released it. It's a co-production with Universal. Universal released it in the United States. And Universal still has some rights attached to this film. So if you make a Curse of the Werewolf product, and that's a whole other discussion about the licensing for Curse of the Werewolf, but if you do, you're probably going to need to involve Universal at some level. So this is not a real art poster. This is an actual original first release poster. I mean, the one that this is based on. So they took, now the real poster doesn't look like this. The lettering doesn't look like that. And at some point during this discussion, I'll put the original that I own on the screen so you can see what that looks like, what the real deal looks like. So this is an example where they didn't have, I guess, a real art equivalent. This is a later film. It's a 60s film. So there wouldn't be a real art version. But so they had the actual original release version, the original release poster, the French version, and they took that image from that poster. And it's cool to have this just so I don't mess up my real one. I can show that one. And I think, well, like on an occasion such as this. Here is that Bride of Frankenstein image that they've been using, that you've already seen on some products. This is the real art Bride of Frankenstein poster. At least that's what they used to make this. Again, it's altered somewhat. It's cropped. And there's text on the real art poster that's not on this. But the real art poster was the basis for this. And it's a very dramatic poster. I can't quite get it all on screen here on this side camera. Unfortunately, I started collecting posters a little too late to get in on these real art posters. I have a couple, but I wish I'd started collecting just even just 2 years earlier, and I probably would have this real art, the real thing, because right when I started collecting, the real art posters went poof. They skyrocketed. You could get almost any of them for under $1,000 when I started, and then they went up over 1,000, over 2,000. It just went right after I started collecting posters. I did get a couple, but not this one. But I wish I'd I'd focused on that a little sooner and gotten in on those cheaper prices, because I can't afford them now. This is a little different. Maybe I can kind of get this all on camera. I don't know. I don't think I can. Maybe this way. This is obviously a Dracula poster. This is real art. This is the real art re-release of the 1931 Dracula. That is, at least that's what they used for it. And you can see the kind of spook show aesthetic. I can't even see what you can or can't see. What am I even showing in this camera? Unfortunately, I see this wrap is starting to come off here. These were all shrink wrapped at the store, and I just kept the shrink wrap on them because it's a good way to preserve the poster. These are just flimsy paper on a card back, and it's just attached with this shrink wrap. And I think most of the people who bought these, the collectors who bought these, kept the shrink wrap on, because why not? Protects the poster. Some of these cards have gotten bent over time, particularly down the middle, just because that's like a weak spot. As you handle them and move them around, they tend to bend in the middle. Dracula, the vampire bat that lives on human blood. That's a weird tagline. Screamy. The original uncut version, terrifying. Imitated but never duplicated. You can tell that's not the original 1931 poster art, because look at that. Look at his eyes. It's more exploitive. The real art posters have more of an exploitation angle. And these are cool because, who can afford these days the actual posters? I can't. I could for a minute, but not for long. Then they went, zerp. This is King Kong. Oh, this is not, I don't think this is a real art poster. I think this is, because King Kong was re-released many times over the years. And I think this is probably a 1950s re-release poster. And that's another thing I should have gotten in on much sooner, because there was a time when you could get a 1950s re-release King Kong poster for under $1,000. That time has passed. So I should have got one when you could. Now you can't. But that looks like what they probably took this from. It is probably a 50s re-release Kong poster, because the original King Kong is from 1933, and I know they the X1X archive posters were all the less expensive versions. So, the real art reissues and stuff like that. So they didn't have a 33 King Kong poster. I do know that there should be more going on down here. You can see that it's cropped. So it's like all of these, they're zoomed in and cropped. King Kong is, at least the original, is not Universal Studios, it's RKO. And as we've discussed on another episode, the rights to King Kong are kind of weird and spread between multiple companies. This is the funniest one. King of the Lizards. King of the Lizards. And obviously taken from the 1954 Godzilla poster, but well, not really the poster though. This looks like it's taken from a still where I think there's a wire in his hands and there might be a train in his mouth. Because it looks like they've painted out the train. Can you see it there? Look there. So it looks like they might have painted out a train and put this atomic breath in there, and I think there should be a wire kind of going that he's holding there. So I don't think that's a poster, though. I think that's a still, a movie still, maybe a lobby card. Yeah, probably a lobby card. But that's not, definitely it's not the US poster, original poster, and it's not the Japanese original poster, so I think it's either a still or a lobby card. But Toho is notoriously litigious, so you see there, even X1X didn't want to mess with Toho, so they call him King of the Lizards. That's the funniest of all this stuff, that they sort of caved on that one. They weren't going to mess with Toho. Toho will sue me for just holding this up. Every time I mention Godzilla on the show, I worry. And you can, well, maybe you probably can't see, but it's got a crease where it's bending here. But Toho will sue you. They will sue fans for fan-made Godzilla stuff. They will sue anybody. Toho loves to sue people. We'll finish with these. I have something on the side over there. Well, let's go through these now. Here's our good buddy that we've seen many times. There's the Frankenstein figure. We'll do these by character. At the same time, they made these weird things. These are finger puppets. And I think there was a fad. I think there was a fad for a while for this style of puppet with these bats like this. I think that was a fad. That there were other companies making puppets like this. I prefer the full body figures over the finger puppets. Interesting which one of these say Creepy Classics and which ones do not. This says Creepy Classics at the top, as does the full body figure. But not all of these say Creepy Classics. We'll see that in a moment. I wonder if the date has anything to do with that. We'll find out. This is 2006, 2006. Both the Frankensteins are 2006. Let's move over from Universal for a moment and look at Godzilla. Excuse me, King of the, well, 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 well. Look at this. Here is the Godzilla. It has that same poster art back there. But it says King of Monsters. Not King of the Monsters, but still King of Monsters. Not King of the Lizards. He doesn't have his plates on his back, his spinal fins. Fans call them different things. Plates, spines, fins. He's obviously a Godzilla, though. I mean, look at the, from the poster art, he's Godzilla. And looking here, that's Godzilla. King of the Monsters, but it just says King of Monsters. And it does not say Creepy Classics. This is 2005. Oh, look at that. Cut out your own mini poster. I guess they all say that. Cut out your own mini poster. See the little dashes around the poster? Cut out your own mini poster. And then it says King of Monsters again and again and again behind that. And the Frankenstein says Frankenstein, Frankenstein, Frankenstein behind it. But this is 2005. This King of Monsters Godzilla figure. Now here is the finger puppet. Now it says King of Lizards. King of the Lizards. And it has the Creepy Classics logo on top. King of the Lizards. And yeah, Godzilla has a baseball bat. There's a name for these finger puppets with the baseball bats, not just for X1X, but for the whole genre of those kinds of puppets, and I don't remember what the name is, but there is a name for that particular kind of puppet. Like I said, it was a fad for a while. Classic Monster Freaky Fighter assortment. Does it say Freaky Fighter anywhere? Oh, look at that. There's a illustration of a thumb, a hand with a thumb. See the thumb going up into the puppet, but that box covers it up. Warning, choking hazard, small parts. Really? Doesn't look like a small part. This is copyright 2006. Whereas the full-size, full-body figure is 2005. Classic Monster Freaky Fighter assortment. Distributed by Greenbrier, which is the same company as that one. So it has a different copyright date. And it says King of the Lizards instead of King of the Monsters. Since we did Godzilla, let's do King Kong. See what we can find here. And it's the same thing. The full body figure is 2005, and the Freaky Fighter is 2006. Let's start with the full body figure. That is a cute little King Kong. Look at that. Isn't he cute? And they try to mimic the pose on the calendar. Well, calendar, what am I saying? The calendar. It's like we're looking at Don Post calendars or something. No, the poster. They're trying to mimic the pose that's on the poster. So he's got that kind of an odd pose, but it's dynamic. I like that. If not for the attempt to mimic the poster, we wouldn't get that pose. And that would be a shame, because that's an interesting pose for Kong. I'm sure we would have gotten a more static pose. Or maybe with his arms up in the air or something. That's the back. And that looks like the poster they used was a re-release poster, probably an insert from the shape of it, an insert. So, probably a 50s re-release insert, which would be a more affordable option for a King Kong poster, for a vintage King Kong poster. Not so much now, but back then, if you're trying to get your hands on a vintage King Kong movie poster, a re-release insert would be a good way to do it. The inserts were generally cheaper than the one sheets. I like the way the cast is depicted down there. And again, we have cut out your own mini poster. So they're emphasizing the poster element, because that's what this whole enterprise is based on. Here's the Freaky Fighter. Under the Creepy Classics banner. And it doesn't say Freaky Fighter on the front. You would think they would brand it with that, but no, it's just small print on the back that identifies it as a Freaky Fighter series. These are freaky fighters with the baseball bats, these puppets. That's not a bad King Kong. For a rack toy, it's not a bad likeness of King Kong. You can tell that it's King Kong. It's not just a gorilla. It's not Planet of the Apes. It's not Bigfoot. It's King Kong. You can look at it and tell that. That's what it is. It's King Kong. Very similar back, but a different copyright date. Let's see if that holds true for all of them. The Freaky Fighters are 2006, and the full body ones are 2005. Well, it doesn't hold true with Frankenstein. He's 2006. That's why I said that they're not consistent. And the Freaky Fighter Frankenstein is 2006. So let's see how that plays out. We'll continue with the non-Universal. Curse of the Werewolf, it's distributed by Universal. It's co-produced by Universal. But it's a Hammer movie. And both the puppet and the full body figure are 2006. And they both say Creepy Classics. And they both have that little die-cut dome arch on top, that little area there, see? So these cards are not the same. And I wondered if I have, I bet I do have Curse of the Werewolf figure cards that don't have the Creepy Classics. Now I need to go check. Now is not the time to do it. If I'd noticed that sooner, I would have done it before the episode. Not a lot of Curse of the Werewolf merchandise out there. Here we have a Curse of the Werewolf action figure. I've got a stuffed claw machine. Is that what those things are called? A stuffed claw machine Curse of the Werewolf doll. And I was going to include it in this, but I didn't see any X1X markings on it, so I'm not sure that that's X1X. I don't think it is. But it came out around the same time as the rest of these things. And there was also a Curse of the Werewolf candle, a head candle. And I have that somewhere. I located the doll, the stuffed doll. I didn't locate the candle. Those could be X1X. I'm not sure. I didn't see any markings on them that identified them as X1X. Classic monster figurine assortment. So that's what this series is called. Kind of neat that they emphasize how you can cut out the poster, but you can also buy the poster. You can buy that poster on the back of the card at the same store where you're finding this figure. These are dollar store figures, so you can find right in the same aisle the full-size poster. And I like how all these products kind of work together. They were all at the store at the same time. You could buy the poster, you could buy the puppet, you could buy the figure. And now all of this is 2006. Here's the puppet, the Freaky Fighter, Oliver Reed's Curse of the Werewolf with a club. They even gave him the red sash. I like that. Interesting that they went with Curse of the Werewolf instead of the Wolfman. I wonder if they just couldn't get a real art Wolfman poster. Of course, I love that poster, the real thing. It's a very underrated movie poster. I like it more than the US one sheet or the UK quad. I like that French poster. And I think it's French, but I've heard it referred to, or I've read people refer to it as a Belgian poster. Is it Belgian or is it French? I think it's France. I think it's for the French release. I think. I could be wrong. Let's look at Dracula. So the Dracula figurine does not have the Creepy Classics logo on it. And it's from 2005. That's interesting. I mean, at least the copyright date it says 2005. So there is the Dracula. And you see it's got that same poster we just saw. That's why it was important to look at the posters earlier before we looked at these, because the posters are what tie these all together. It has that same poster art. There's a cute little Dracula. It doesn't really look like Lugosi, but that's Lugosi, obviously, but I don't know who that looks like. But it's a cute little miniature Dracula. I don't know if you're getting the scale. I mean, you can see my hand in the shot. You can see how tiny these things are. These are little itsy bitsy little things. These are not 3 3/4 inch or something like that. These are tiny, tiny little figures, but they're nice. They're actually well done for what they are. And that makes me wonder who actually manufactured these figures. This is distributed by Greenbrier. I mean, who did X1X manufacture these? They had to have it says made in China, so there must have been a factory in China that pumped these out, but I just wonder who did it. And also, that you notice that the full-size poster was sort of a half-sheet format. It was horizontal. And this one on the back is a one-sheet orientation. It's vertical. But I think the actual poster in their archive was probably a real art half-sheet. But I don't have that poster, so it could be that maybe Real Art issued that as a horizontal orientation. I don't think they would have, because they had to be standardized to go into the frames at the movie theater back at that time, so they couldn't have messed around with the orientation, so it must have been a half sheet. But I don't own it. Here's the puppet, and it looks more like the Phantom of the Opera. Doesn't that look more like the Phantom than Dracula? I think so. Much more like the Phantom, but it's supposed to be Dracula. It's supposed to be Count Dracula. Not Count Orlok. Not Count Von Count. Count Dracula. I wonder if they deliberately steered away from Bela's likeness, if they had enough sense to not want to mess with Lugosi Jr. They had enough sense to not want to mess with Toho, so they didn't call that the poster or the toy Godzilla. I bet they had enough sense to know better than to mess with Lugosi Jr. Final character in this series is the Mummy. You know, I like Mummy merchandise a lot. I like the character. I like the movies. I like the character, but I particularly like the merchandise for the Mummy. And this is a cute little mummy. Look at that little guy. Aww. He needs a nap. Just let him have a nap. Isn't he cute? Look at that little mummy. This is the Creepy Classics version of the card. So I'm thinking it's going to say 2006 on the back. We'll check on that. I like the blue on the back. (2006), and look at that. So they've got the whole poster pictured, including the bottom, and you can see the Real Art logo. I don't know if you can see it on this camera, but you can see the Real Art distribution logo down there. I don't think I saw that on these other ones. Yeah, this Dracula figurine is 2005. The one that doesn't have the Creepy Classics logo is 2005. But I don't think any of these. Well, and this side would not anyway. But Frankenstein, Dracula, they don't have the Real Art logo on the back of the card. And the full-size Mummy poster that I showed you, it crops off the bottom. So it doesn't have it. But this has it. It's right there. And finally, last one, the Freaky Fighter Mummy puppet, copyright 2006. And this also has the Real Art logo on the back. There's the Freaky Fighter. You can see the poster art. Ah, look at him. Boy, these are weird. These puppets particularly, these are just weird. It's bizarre. I don't know what that fad was all about. But other companies made puppets like that to go on your thumb with clubs like that. It was a thing for a minute. There's the back. There's the bottom of the poster that you don't see on the full-size one that I showed earlier. That's all of the little dollar store figures. Now the last thing we're going to look at would be these. And I didn't really look at these before shooting this, so I'm kind of seeing them for the first time in a long time. Funko Force. So Funko's, as we saw with Pez, big companies got involved with this. So Funko is a big company. This is Funko Force. And these are not Funko Pops. These are action figures. They're like super deformed, kind of Little Big Hit style action figures. And the branding is just Movie Monsters. This is the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Funko Force. Movie Monsters. Is there anything else on here? Amazing, Startling, Shocking. Radio Days. Now I saw that. I could swear I saw that Radio Days on another product earlier. Not on these figures. Maybe it was the fabric stuff. I don't know. 2009 X1X Movie Archive, made in China. So that's a lot. That's several years after the rest of this stuff. 2009, they were still doing this. And I recognize that poster. Well, let's take a look. Here is the Funko Force Creature from the Black Lagoon. A little different from what we've been seeing so far, huh? This is much more elaborate. Much more elaborate. Look at that. That's a nice figure. Look at that detail. And no, it's not a Funko Pop, thank goodness. I don't know what that weird Transformers insignia is on top of there. I don't know what Funko Force is all about. I recognize that art, but isn't that from the one sheet for Revenge of the Creature? Would they have owned a Revenge one sheet? Maybe, I don't know. This is from a European release poster. I don't remember if that's Italy or Spain. I think it's Spain. But that image is from a European release poster. So I can imagine that they would have that poster. I mean, I think I could buy that poster still to this day. But a Revenge one sheet, if that's what that is, I can't buy that. It's not a one sheet, because the Revenge one sheet, yeah, actually I think that is what that is. I don't know. No, I couldn't afford that. And that's a little bit more advanced than a lot of what we've seen so far. Most of these posters are real art or European release, re-releases. I don't know where they got the Frederick March Jekyll Hyde poster. That would be an expensive one, and it didn't look like a re-release poster image, but who knows. They might have gotten that image off a lobby card or something. I'm not sure. But that revenge image on the front, that looked like a pricey poster. So maybe they took the money they made off all this other stuff and bought some higher end posters to put in their archive. Now we have Dracula, and he is really well done. I don't see a Bela Lugosi, or maybe what's this? No, Funko Force. Funko made in China. No, I mean definitely no Universal license, but also no Lugosi license. But this one, I mean, it's not a Lugosi likeness, but it's a really nice Universal Dracula likeness. I've seen much worse Universal Draculas, let's put it that way. I like that. Is it Bela Lugosi? No. But is it a Universal Studios Dracula? Absolutely. And I think it's better than, oh, I don't know, like, like Mego's 14-inch Dracula. Also, stuff like the Pleco Dracula. Even some of the recent Dracula toys that are supposed to be Bela Lugosi don't really look like him. So no, it doesn't look like Lugosi, but it has that Universal Dracula vibe. So if you're going to do a Universal Dracula that doesn't, and you don't have the Lugosi likeness, that's how you do it. Now, granted, this is not Universal licensed, so they didn't have to go through Universal's marketing department, and they didn't have to abide by the style guide. And that's probably, that's why it looks good, because it's not beholden to the generic style guide. That's why it actually looks like Dracula, even though it's not Bela Lugosi. A little different logo design. That's obviously not from any poster I've ever seen. That's a very modern looking way of presenting the title. That looks like it must be from a still, a movie still. I don't think there's any poster with that image. It's got the same image on the front. They probably took that from a still. Now, if you don't know what a still is, that just means a photograph. An official photograph issued by the studio to promote the film. When you see photos from old movies and books, those are stills. Nowadays, maybe they'd take a Blu-ray and do a screen grab, I don't know. But back in the day, they had official movie stills. This is well, I was going to say this is a Wolfman. They don't call him a Wolfman. They call him a werewolf. But that sure looks like the Wolfman. Look at that. Isn't he cute? He's very cute. I think that's a cute Wolfman. And to compare it to Mego again, it's a lot. It's no comparison. It's a lot better than the Universal Mego Wolfman and even the MC Universal Wolfman. Both of those figures don't look any half as good as this sculpt. Is it as good as NECA? No, it's not as good as NECA. Of course not. Let's not be ridiculous here. But look at that. The werewolf. I mean, that is the Wolfman, right? That's Cheney Jr.'s Wolfman. It's not Oh, like what is that Mexican film? It's not Cheney from the Mexican film or from the TV show. I'm drawing a blank on all this stuff. Those times, after Universal, where there were a couple of times where he played a werewolf. It's not from those. I'll remember as soon as I stop recording. I'll remember the names. Here's a bigger image, obviously. What is that from? I mean, it looks like it's from a Universal film, but maybe it's not. Is that an image from a Universal Wolfman movie? It looks like it. The werewolf. Oh, what is the name of that Mexican film? Face of the Screaming Werewolf. There we go. That's not the Mexican title, but the U.S. release title, Face of the Screaming Werewolf. Is that what this is from? I don't know. It doesn't look like it. Maybe. I don't know. Looks like the Wolfman to me. Could be Face of the Screaming Werewolf. I don't know. And what's that episode of the TV show where Karloff and Cheney Jr. and Laurie, and they try to scare some people, and Cheney puts on the Wolfman makeup for that. I don't think that's what it is. Could be. This is Frankie. It's sort of Karloffian. It's not exactly. It's not a bad Karloff. At least he doesn't have a green jacket. That's nice. The man-made monster. It's alive. You see what I mean? It's not exactly Boris Karloff, but it's a good Karloff style Frankenstein. It does have the neck bolts. Does he have the forehead scar? I think he does, but it's not painted. I'm looking for the trademark elements. Yeah, I mean, he has a scar, it's just not painted. And he's got a gray outfit, which is, it's kind of like the walk around theme park Frankenstein that has a gray outfit. And we might be hearing more about the theme park Frankenstein on this program this season, unless some disaster befalls that episode that I'm playing. That'll be the shortest episode of the season, because I only have one item to show you for that, so I'm wondering how I'm going to pump that up to make an episode out of it. But anyway, we'll be talking about theme park Frankensteins very soon. It's a cool figure. I like it. There's the packaging. And that is not from a poster, for sure. I believe there is a movie still. Yeah, I'm sure there is, where Karloff looks like that. But there's also a painting, a famous painting that was used on a book cover. But I think the painting was based on that still. So the archive probably had that still. I imagine that's where they got that image. Because there's no poster that I know. There's no Frankenstein poster that has that face on it. But there is a still. I don't think there's a lobby card that has that image. There's a famous still of the monster, and there is a well-known book cover that had a painting inspired by that image. I think it's a nice set of monster toys, actually. I mean, they're not, it's not Funko. It is Funko, but I mean, it's not Funko Pops. If it were, I wouldn't like it. It strikes a good balance between that more fun, goofy, cartoony style and something, a more serious kind of monster toy. That's the end of the road. These are the final X1X toys they have to show you. But I mean, compared to where we started, these are pretty advanced. And none of this is Universal. None of these toys are licensed by Universal. I'm not sure if they're in the shot. Let me bring them back a little bit to make sure they're in the shot. So yeah, none of these toys are licensed by Universal Studios. None of them have actor likeness rights. They're X1X, based on the posters or stills that were used in the artwork for the packaging. And as we saw, it's from where's my magnifying glass? There it is. It's not from 19 anything. That's from 2009, right? Yep, 2009. These are from 2009. So we've got dates ranging from 2005 to 2009. And I haven't seen any X1X stuff in a long time, so I'm assuming they're not doing this anymore for whatever reason. I told you about the various legal entanglements that they encountered, but not, as far as from what I could tell from my research, not with Universal. I mean, completely possible Universal might have sent them cease and desist notices that were never made public. But as far as what's publicly available, there's no record of anything from Universal Studios contacting them or trying to stop this or saying anything about it. So I don't know. You would, just from my own experience and what I know about Universal, I cannot believe Universal wouldn't have taken some kind of action, because they will pounce on things so much less than what we see here. But I don't know. I don't have any information to verify that Universal did anything. But you gotta admit, it's a ballsy move to put stuff like this out. Stuff like this, major companies, and not get Universal licensing. But it's also interesting to note that they look good. And as I said, they look better than some of the Universal licensed merchandise of the time, or going back the previous 20 years before this, all the way to the present. I mean, you really have to look at the NECA figures, or, obviously the serious stuff like Sideshow, or some of the Diamond Select toys. I mean, the stuff that's trying to be very realistic and adult-oriented, yeah, that looks great. But the toys, the more fun-oriented, plaything-oriented merchandise, for Universal, tends to look kind of poor and dissatisfying. And these look pretty cool, and I think it's because they didn't go through Universal. They didn't have the encumbrance of having to get approval from Universal's licensing department and adhere to the style guides, which are typically very generic. If you don't go with the movie actor likeness and you want a generic license, those style guide designs tend to be very, very generic. And the toys that result are very generic looking. And for a monster fan, they're not very satisfying. But I think these have a lot more character, and it's because they're not licensed. I mean, through Universal. Funko licensed these through X1X. So they are licensed in that regard through X1X. Well, let's put these away. That's all I have to say about that. X1X was an interesting experiment in licensing. And I'd be curious to know what happened to them. Ultimately, obviously they're not in the business anymore, so something happened. Because we're not seeing X1X product in the stores anymore. So, at least not things that are on my radar, like, monster toys. So I wonder what happened to them ultimately. And what happened to their archive. And what was this archive really? How vast was this archive? Was it somebody's closet, kind of like right behind this wall? There's a closet full of vintage movie posters right behind here. And I guess I could have my little basement of horror archive and license all kinds of stuff. I wouldn't, because I would get sued and it wouldn't work, because I think the precedent has been established that this doesn't work. That's what I'm getting out of this, that from what I've read, from what I've learned, it seems like, and it's the fact that no one else has tried this, because I mean, let's say that this did work. Okay, like I've got this Curse of the Werewolf poster, the same one they've got. Does that mean that I can start licensing Curse of the Werewolf? I've got the poster, just like they do. So what's the difference? What would stop me then from saying, if you want a Curse of, like Mego said that they couldn't make a Curse of the Werewolf figure because of licensing problems. Well, come to me. I've got the poster. You can just license it through me, through X1 Raymond. I've got the very same poster. If this actually worked that way, anyone could do that. I've got all kinds of stuff. I don't have Dracula, Lugosi Dracula, but I've got Dracula's daughter, so we could license a Dracula's daughter figure. Well, I think it's been established that it doesn't work that way. Otherwise, everyone would do it. And I would get sued into the next galaxy if I tried. Not that I would really be interested in trying that anyway. That just doesn't. Trying to game the system. I'm not a hustler. I'm just not a hustler. I'm not looking for the angle. I'm not looking for a gimmick. That's just not my personality. A few years ago, like I said, a dozen or so years ago, I probably would be very critical of X1X, and I probably would be very scolding of them. But nowadays, I don't care. Like, if they could have gotten away with it, fine. That would be fine. That'd be great. Then we'd have a bunch of toys that we wouldn't have otherwise. And they did get away with it because the toys are right here. So in that regard, they got away with it. We have the toys. They I guess, were not able to continue getting away with it because we don't have more toys. But I don't care if you can. My attitude now is if something like this would work and you could do it, then do it. If it works, more power to you. At this point in my life, I just don't care. I don't care about corporations like Universal or Paramount or MGM or anyone, or Disney or anyone else. I think they can take care of themselves very, very well. I guess that's a good place to wrap things up. This is a much longer episode than I thought it would be because I rambled about all kinds of other unrelated nonsense, and this is a very long episode. But we've had a long break, so you deserve a long episode. I think my audience likes long episodes. This is more like a podcast than a YouTube presentation. Think of it more like a podcast. It basically is a podcast, except it's not available on any podcast platforms, and you really have to watch it to get the most out of it. But it's more or less, practically a podcast, even though the Rondo Awards always put me in the best website category. Best website. That's what this is, isn't it? It's a website. Oh, well, okay. If it's a show, it's a show. But if you had to pigeonhole it a little more, if you want to call it a podcast, call it a podcast. It's not really, but you can call it that. I think that's it. I'm hearing strange noises, and it's starting to spook me. The basement of horror can get a little spooky. So there might be a ghost down here. I think I better get out before the ghost gets to me. See, I'm starting to get scared. I'm going to get the heck out of here. Something's going on in this basement. Thank you very much. Until next time, the one who dies with the most toys is dead.